and use their real names. Just one quick thing, back to the line there where it shows which team won. It defaults to the plaintiff. So you have to manually enter that winning team. We had a couple of ballots last night where the totals were in favor of the defense, but the scoring panelists neglected to make a manual entry showing the defense. And so it came up plaintiff. So make sure you make that manual entry. Yeah, probably the most effective way is cross-examination and impeachment. Where in the world did you get that? Please look at your affidavit. Where in your affidavit is that stated? And that's usually sufficient to alert the scoring panelists to the fact that the witness has strayed outside the affidavit. There is a technical rule where a party could object based on the mock trial rule of unfair extrapolation, and that'll be a call that the presiding judge needs to make. And you can handle that by just going through a quick analysis. Number one, is it outside the scope? two, and this is probably the most important one, is it a material fact that is outside the scope? If they say they have red hair and it was brown or something, that's not really material to the case. However, if it's a foundational fact, then it would be material, and therefore you could rule that it is unfair extrapolation. And that's really nothing more than a signal to the other scoring judges that they've gone outside the boundaries. But again, I haven't seen that raised formally in 5 years. It's best handled in the context of cross-examination and impeachment. And the other thing I'd add just on the ballots, if you take your time on the front end and get yourself oriented as to which students occupy what roles by name, particularly with respect to the lawyers, then you're going to have a lot more fun going through this instead of scrambling back and forth trying to figure out who that person was relative to. It's Yeah, please note this, folks. 719-432-8301. That's my cell. You can text it or call it. Thanks, everybody. Have fun.
Oh, our name is the same thing.
Mr. Acosta. Mr. Acosta.
Welcome, everybody. This is Steve Bailey. I'll be administering this courtroom. The judges are on their way in, and when the presiding judge, Judge Johnson, comes on, she will be asking you if everybody on your team and plus timekeepers are present. And here's Judge Johnson now. So Judge Johnson will be asking to confirm that all team members and timekeepers are present. Also to confirm that there is nobody other than team members and timekeepers present in the courtroom. So if we were all here, we would all rise for Judge Johnson. Judge, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let me just check to make sure that I have both of my panelists. I see I have one for sure. Looks like Mr. Munt, not quite yet. I'm waiting for him to come in. Let me just ask for the plaintiff, or if I can have both sides share their rosters. I believe that will go in the chat. So while I'm waiting to see that go in there. So my name is Frances Johnson. I'm a district court judge in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I currently have a criminal docket and a domestic relations docket. Once my other panelists comes in, I will make sure that I check for conflicts. And I do see that team. Let's see. One team did enter their roster. Okay, so thank you, plaintiff. Do I have all the members of the defense present?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And are you able to provide your roster to the chat?
I believe we did, but we might be having some technical difficulties.
Okay. Okay. Defense, are you team 5?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. So then are all the members of the plaintiff present?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And did you also provide your roster to the chat?
We submitted it electronically, Your Honor. Would you like us to put it in the chat?
If you would, please. Thank you.
Okay.
While we're waiting here, this is Bailey. Please note, judges, on your score sheets that team 6 is the plaintiff, team 5 is the defendant.
Thank you.
Judge, this is Dennis, your
Yes.
helper. It looks like Team 6 is just posting names. Do they happen to have a PDF or a Word file, maybe, with a roster?
And plaintiff, feel free to answer that question directly.
Thank you, Your Honor. We submitted our PDF online. So should you want us to submit the PDF instead of putting our names?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And that just allows us to pull it up and print it if we want.
Your Honor,
Yes,
just to specify, for Team 5, our roster is on the second page.
the second page. Thank you for that. Let me see if I have Mr. Munt yet. Mr. Bailey, are you still there?
I am, Your Honor. I'll check with, see if
Okay.
I can get a hold of Mr. Mudd.
So, and yeah, I was just going to ask, should we wait for him or do you want me to just get started?
No, let's just hold off a minute. We'll see if we can call him.
Okay.
Your Honor, Mr. Munt's phone went right to voicemail. I just sent him an email, so if we could hold just another 2 or 3 minutes, please.
Sure.
Your Honor, I believe Mr. Munt has joined us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Munt, so the students' information in terms of witness names, et cetera, and attorney names are in the chat. Are you able to navigate that? Let me see if you're on mute. I see you just unmuted yourself. Are you able to go to the chat to access, to get that information?
Well, I am at the chat, but I don't have anything in the chat.
That's okay. It might be because you just connected. Give me just a moment and we're going to work around that, okay?
Yes,
All right, Mr. Shoemaker, are you ready to go forward?
I believe so. The list from Team 6 is,
It's in a JPEG, yeah.
yeah, I got it. And I just had some question about, whether the witness 1 is Melody. Is she Casey Rogers or?
That's
I
my
can't tell.
understanding. Right, so
Okay,
the student name is the witness and the
Gotcha.
character they're playing is plaintiff character. Yeah,
thank you very much.
you're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to go to pretrial procedures. So is the plaintiff ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is the defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so I know this is going to be a little out of order, but I'll ask if you can all just bear with us. I'm going to have each side slowly, individually introduce your team, so that will give Mr. Munt an opportunity to write down your names. Mr. Munt, do you have your scoring sheet ready, or whatever mechanism you're going to use to score? Are you ready on that part?
I've got the paper one, but I don't have the actual one.
That's fine. So you'll have time after that to do that. Are you ready to go forward with the paper one that you have?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So I just need to remind the teams that no recesses will be allowed, with the exception of those granted for a health emergency, and especially not between the end of the witness examination and the beginning of closing arguments. I will have discretion to stop time for technical difficulties in this competition. So at this time, I apologize again to the teams that we're going to go a little bit out of order, but if I can have the plaintiffs please introduce yourselves so that way that Mr. Munt can get your names down.
Yes. Good morning, Your Honor. My name is
Morning.
Carlos, and I deliver the opening statement as direct Dakota Weirs and cross Blake Doncourt. And at this time, my co-counsels would like to introduce themselves.
What's his name?
So first attorney for plaintiff, I apologize if you can go back and say your name again.
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Carlos.
Okay,
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Mila, and I direct Carson Durst across Dr. Devin Williams, and I deliver the closing argument.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Layla, and I direct Dr. Casey Rogers, and I cross Skylar Weirs. And if it's all right with you, Your Honor, our witnesses would like to introduce themselves now.
Yes.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Melody and I'm Dr. Casey Rogers.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Michelle and I am Carson Durst.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Callista and I am Dakota Weirs.
Thank you. Mr. Mott, were you able to get all of that down?
Melody and then Michelle is doing what?
Michelle will be Carson Durst.
Question, Dirk?
Carson Durst, D-U-R-S-T.
Yeah.
And Melody will be Dr. Rogers. Mr. Shoemaker, did you need any clarification on any of that?
No, I'm fine. Thank you very much, Judge.
Thank you. Okay, and if I can please have the defense introduce their team?
Your Honor, members. It's okay, just members of the opposing counsel. My name is Ariana. I will be delivering the opening statement. I will be giving the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams and the direct and cross examination.
I can't hear.
Okay, just a moment.
Examination of.
So Ms. Farmer, if you can pause for just a moment. So there's quite a bit of feedback coming from the room you all are in. Do you all have just one device with the sound on?
Your Honor, I think we fixed the problem.
Yep, I think so. So if you can go ahead and introduce yourself again so Mr. Mike can hear you.
Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, my name is Ariana. I will be delivering the opening statement. I will be doing the direct examination of Devin Williams, and I will be doing the cross-examination of Carson Durst.
Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, my name is Sophie, and I will be delivering the direct examination of Skylar Weirs, as well as the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers.
Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, my name is Catherine, and I will be providing the direct examination of Blake Doncourt, the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs, as well as the closing argument.
Okay.
At this time, our witnesses would like to introduce themselves.
Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, my name is Mariah and I am Blake Doncourt.
Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, my name is Eliza and I am Skylar Weirs.
Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, I am Mason and I am Devin William.
Thank you. Mr. Mott, did you get all of that?
I think so, yes.
Mr. Mott and Mr. Shoemaker, well, let me start with Mr. Mott. Do you have any reason to believe that you have a bias as to either team or a conflict with either team?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Shoemaker, same question to you.
No, Your Honor.
And for the record, I do not recognize a conflict either. I need to remind the teams and coaches that any disputes arising out of this competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. Teams must be in compliance with time requirements, and that will be considered in scoring individual performances. Okay, so at this time, if I can have the scoring panelists and the, let me start actually with team members. If I can have all the team members, please raise your right hands. I'm going to trust you that you have your right hand raised, even though I won't be able to see all of you at the same time. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? If so, please answer yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Your Honor.
yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Gallery members, including teacher and attorney coaches, family members, and friends, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round?
And Your Honor, they're probably in the gallery and not
Okay.
present in this courtroom.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Scoring panelists, so Mr. Mott and Mr. Shoemaker, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts and procedures and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Perfect, thank you. For the plaintiff, do you have any preliminary matters that you would like addressed?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff asked permission to use any remaining time from our closing argument for rebuttal.
Granted. Any other preliminary matters for the plaintiff?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Does the defense have any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, on behalf of both teams, let the record reflect that one of my team members will be posting the appropriate trial rosters for competition in the Zoom chat for the purpose of exchanging rosters as a preliminary matter.
So noted.
Also, let the record reflect that both teams have agreed to the stipulated facts and jury instructions for this case, and will also be entered into this chat for yourself and for the jury to be considered constructively read into the record.
Okay, so noted.
Your Honor, we request the court's preferences on recross examinations.
So certainly you need to take into consideration your time, but I'm fine with one brief recross.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we also ask that pursuant to competition rule 7.4, that when an exhibit is shown to a witness, a member of the examining attorney's team will be able to pull up that exhibit utilizing the Zoom screen sharing factors. Additionally, all exhibits or other documents posted in this manner are deemed to not have been shown to the jury unless the counselor asked for them to be published.
That's granted.
Also, according to the competition rule 4.7, no additional edits are to be made to the documents, including markings or enlargements outside of today's trial, and will be allowed if edits were made in today's trial utilizing the Zoom annotation factors. In addition, pursuant to rule 7.4, we can utilize Zoom annotation tools to enlarge documents during this trial.
Thank you for making us aware of that.
Additionally, we ask that all evidence be deemed to have been constructively handed to opposing counsel for the review.
It will.
Your Honor, if at any point in the trial the court cannot hear or see the witness or attorney, please feel free to interrupt us at any point.
Okay.
Your Honor, we understand that sound quality and internet connectivity may vary at all times throughout this trial, and we ask that if either team experiences difficulties in regards to internet connection, that the court stops all proceedings and have time to allow witnesses or attorneys to come back and re-ask or re-answer their question to the full capacity of their ability.
Yeah, we will address that if that issue arises.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we also would like to ask that our timekeepers be allowed to post time remaining publicly within the Zoom chat feature throughout this trial to ensure that we meet time demands, as this is a timed trial.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense has no preliminary matters.
Okay, thank you. Plaintiff, are you ready to present your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
May it please the court, opposing counsels and with the jury. Sustainable, affordable, and lethal. You're here today because Lush Fertilizers care more about the sustainability and affordability of the product than the safety of its customers. Lush put a carcinogenic product on the market without a safety label. This action resulted in a lethal consequence. Our client, Dakota Weirs, has contracted non-Hodgkin lymphoma as a result of Lush negligence. Today, we'll prove to you that Lush is responsible not only for Ms. Weirs' lymphoma, but also for corruption only for the gain of money. Dakota is not the only one to have had their life torn apart. Our expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, put together a study that showed that others with exposure to Drufo's life has also been impacted by cancer. She has done her own research on how Drufo is dangerous and has been linked to cancer. With a PhD in agriculture and a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, she took into her own hands to prove that Drufo is harmful. The defense would try to convict Dr. Casey Rogers of having a sloppy experiment, although she followed the fundamental rules of a scientific study. Then an ex-employee, Carson Durst, was laid off after trying to bring her concerns the safety of Drufo to the company's management. Today, you'll hear how Carson is accused of going behind Lush's back to Terrace Greenery, their biggest competitor, trying to make her out as a liar who can't be trusted, although this is all a cover for them not taking responsibility when they were told that the product was unsafe. Finally, you'll hear from our client, Dakota Weirs, who lost her progress in life and education. Now at the age of 20, she has been faced with a life-threatening disease and has to sacrifice mental health in order to keep going. And at the darkest time, she found a reason for all this, Drufo. Not only she has lost the future she built, but also her passion. Dakota found comfort in the arts of playing the piano, especially after her grandfather passed away. Now having to turn down her scholarship to Juilliard's, the only hope she has left is that the company responsible is held accountable. Instead of taking responsibility, Lush Fertilizers will fight that it's her fault for not following safety precautions when she was 14. Although a decision when you're a teenager should not make them develop cancer. Today, the defense is going to present to you 3 biased, money-hungry, and questionable witnesses. They build their case around the idea that a 14-year-old girl is more responsible than a company that put a product, yes, and a product in the market that they knew that wasn't safe. Dr. Devin Williams will admit to have compromised the product in order to make it affordable. She will tell you that she have a financial bias. In this case, Dr. Devin Williams was hired by Blake Doncourt, CEO of Lush Fertilizers, in order to make the product 3 things: industry-leading, environmentally friendly, and cost-effective. Yet none of those 3 things prioritize human safety. Then Skylar Wills will testify today, claiming to be an expert with no formal education, with only her own research to build off. She will claim to understand how a product chemically makeup makes it safe. Skylar has also been conspiracy theories about pseudoscience, yet she still tries to claim that the argument for Lush is reliable. She will also reveal that she has a grudge against her sister, Dakota, because of their family financial situation. Then CEO of Lush Fertilizers, Blake Doncourt, will tell you about how when developing the product, her main goals was sustainability and financial success of the company. With the option to make Drufo that would make it completely safe, instead, they wanted to use the money to make it environmentally friendly. Blake promotes himself as an environmentalist, donating part of the profits to charity. Yet they believe it's too expensive to bake Drufo, which would ensure the safety of his customers. Blake Donker focused on his financial gain that he had allowed for an unsafe product to harm his customers. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the burden of proof is upon the plaintiffs to prove that Lush Fertilizer was negligence by the preponderance of the evidence, meaning that it's more than likely than not that it caused Dakota Weirs to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The plaintiff today will prove to you that it's more likely than not that Lush Fertilizer caused Dakota's illnesses. And at this trial, we ask for you to find in favor of the plaintiff and find Lush liable. We ask you to hold them accountable and require them to pay $450,000 in physical and emotional damages. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is the defense ready to present their opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, not lacking, not liable, and not lethal. The plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, is suffering from a tragic disease, non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The defense will show you today Lush Fertilizer exercised reasonable care to prevent the product from creating an unreasonable risk of harm. Since the age of 14, Dakota Weirs worked for a landscaping company. She was responsible for spreading the fertilizer. Dakota Weirs used many different types of fertilizer. Dakota Weirs loved feeling the wind on her bare face. Even though Dakota Weirs' boss told her to cover her face when working with chemicals, long sleeves and pants was also something that Dakota Weirs just could not do in the summer. It was too hot. The plaintiff is going to say that a chemical in Lush Fertilizer called Drufo is carcinogenic, but we as the defense will try to show you the evidence you need to see to come to the conclusion that Lush Fertilizer is not to blame. Over the course of this trial, you will see that the research done at Lush Fertilizer is not lacking. Lush Fertilizer is not liable, and Drufo is not lethal. The witnesses of the defense. Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, will testify to the good nature of her company and how the research done at her company was not lacking. How she and her company are not liable. And as far as she knows, Drufo is not lethal. Skylar Weirs, the twin sibling of Dakota Weirs. She is an investigative journalist, and she will testify about her own research on Drufo and her opinions of the safety of the chemical. And Dr. Devin Williams, who will testify to what fertilizer is, the dangers of fertilizer, and how Drufo is combating these problems. He will testify to why Drufo is safe for the environment and the conclusion he has made through research on Drufo. The plaintiff has the burden of a preponderance of evidence. Preponderance of evidence means more probably true than not. If there is any doubt, we as the defense urge you to come to the conclusion that Lush Fertilizer is not liable. The research was not lacking. Lush Fertilizer is not liable. And Drufo is not lethal. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. So before we start with our first witness, let me make sure that Mr. Munt has all of the participants' information that's needed.
Judge, I'd like that list. I don't have the team codes. I don't have, the best list. I copied down as they introduced themselves.
Okay, so plaintiff is team 6 and defense is team 5.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so plaintiff, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand. Okay. Good morning, Dr. Rogers. Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
Good morning, Dr. Casey Rogers, Roders.
Can you please state for the jury where you went to college?
I studied at the University of California at Berkeley and Colorado State University.
And what sort of degrees did you obtain during your time there?
I earned a PhD in agriculture and entomology and a Bachelor of Science in agriculture and chemistry.
Have you shared any of that knowledge with the world?
I've dedicated my work to researching negative side effects caused by prolonged exposure to chemicals.
What else have you used that education for?
My research has been used before litigation in administrative advisory boards, and I've given recommendations to companies and regulatory agencies on precautions that should be taken by workers dealing with chemicals.
Wow, that's quite a lot of work. What do you intend to put it towards?
I hope that this case will open the door to class action lawsuits so that I can fight for people like Ms. Weirs.
Your Honor, the plaintiff moves to enter Dr. Rogers and as an expert in horticulture and agriculture, as she has the knowledge, experience, training, and education under Rule 702.
Any objection?
Your Honor, we have no objections at this time as long as the witness stays within her area of expertise.
Thank you. She may so testify.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, I'd like to talk to you about your research on Drufo and Lush products and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. What kind of chemicals make up Lush's products?
Lush's products includes ingredients like nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, and of course, Drufo.
What exactly does Drufo do?
Drufo is used as a bonding agent to keep fertilizers preserved and intact.
Why did Drufo specifically catch your eye?
I was feared that it was rushed to market without proper safety research.
Can you please explain for the jury what non-Hodgkin lymphoma is?
Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is a form of cancer that attacks the body's white blood cells.
Can non-Hodgkin lymphoma be treated?
It can be treated through chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and surgery.
Is this disease genetic?
Lymphoma is not genetic and is often caused by environmental factors, which can include pesticides.
Is it possible that Ms. Weirs could have contracted non-Hodgkin lymphoma through her work?
While Ms. Weirs worked with the chemical, the particles in Drufo likely entered her body, lung, and skin tissue.
All right, I'd like to discuss your experiment now, okay? Did you conduct an experiment on Drufo?
Yes, I conducted an experiment to determine the negative side effects caused by prolonged exposure to Drufo.
Would you mind telling us what that entailed?
It entailed a controlled group of people. Some were exposed to Drufo occasionally, some often, and others had no exposure at all. Then those participants were monitored over several years for various conditions.
Could those participants have developed those health conditions due to other substances?
While those participants likely lived harsher lives, Drufo is known to be linked to illness.
What were the results of your study?
My study concluded that those with prolonged exposure to Drufo were 10 times more likely to develop cancer than those without exposure, and 5 times more likely than those with occasional exposure. Those participants were mostly diagnosed with endocrine and exocrine-based varieties, which can include non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Jury, could you please explain what you mean by endocrine and exocrine-based varieties?
Endocrine and exocrine-based varieties refers to cancer that can be found on the endocrine and exocrine hormone glands within the pancreas.
How are those varieties important to this case?
This shows that Ms. Weir's diagnosis is similar to those in my study.
And how do your findings impact this case?
This shows that Ms. Weir's prolonged exposure to Drufo is likely the cause of her developing non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Earlier, you mentioned Ms. Weirs and her diagnosis. Can you tell the jury what exactly that diagnosis is?
Yes, I reviewed her charts myself, and Ms. Weirs was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Why do you believe Drufo caused Ms. Weirs' non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
While Ms. Weirs worked for the landscaping company, she was exposed to Drufo for long periods of time, similar to those in my study.
Do you believe there's something else that could have caused Mrs. Weir's cancer?
Although Ms. Weers worked with a great deal of chemicals, Drufo has been linked to cancer as shown in my study.
How exactly could Drufo cause cancer?
Drufo could have been inhaled through her respiratory system or absorbed through her skin, causing cancerous masses to form.
I'm going to address prevention from side effects from Drufo now. Is there any way to prevent side effects from Drufo?
The only way to fully prevent side effects from Drufo is to discontinue the use of it. Although, as a part of my study, I looked into aid in prevention. Ultimately, those working with the chemicals should wear long sleeves and pants and a medical grade face mask.
Does this study prove protective equipment is effective?
I was not able to prove that protective equipment was effective because not all of those participants in my study had proper access to protective equipment.
Why was your study found inconclusive?
There was insufficient time to conclude a solid result.
What does this mean for protective equipment's involvement in safety around Drufo?
This means protective equipment cannot be proven likelihood of developing a negative side effect with prolonged exposure to Drufo.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? You cut out about halfway through.
Yes, this proves that protective equipment cannot be proven to reduce someone's likelihood of developing a negative side effect with prolonged exposure to Drufo.
So, according to your findings, could Dakota Weir's disease have been prevented with the use of protective gear?
According to my findings, even if Ms. Weers had worn protective gear, she still would have developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, you're currently employed as a professor at the University of California at Berkeley.
Correct.
You've done a study on Drufo and the potentially carcinogenic nature of Drufo.
Yes.
You've historically published your research to scientific journals,
Yes,
and you've published these articles in a variety of publications.
that's correct.
And those articles were published in a number of peer-reviewed journal articles.
Yes.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I am showing opposing counsel what has been marked Exhibit 7.
It will.
Dr. Rogers, do you recognize this?
Yes.
Can you tell me what this is?
This is a list of my research publications.
Is this a fair and accurate description of your publications?
Yes.
Is the creation of a curriculum vitae part of your regularly conducted business?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to move Exhibit 7 into evidence?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Permission to publish to the jury?
Granted.
Dr. Rogers, in this list of publications, you list several reviews of other research, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell me, is your study done on Drufo on this list of publications?
Yes.
Can you tell me which one it is?
It looks like it's the 5th one in the list.
So that would be Dr. Casey Rogers, The Evidence of Human Exposure to Drufo, a review,
Yes.
which means it was a review of other people's work.
That's correct.
So it is not your study.
It was my experiment.
But you said it is a review of other people's work.
Yes, with also information from my own experiment.
But you've already confirmed that it's a review.
Yes.
So it is not your study. It is a review of other people's work.
Yes.
So you're telling me that your study done on Drufo, the one that you've testified to in court today, is not on this list.
Correct.
Now, nowhere do you mention that this study you've testified to has been peer reviewed, correct?
Correct.
And nowhere do you mention that your study has been replicated, correct?
That is correct.
As a scientist, you know that if a study can't be replicated, it cannot be verified.
Correct.
Thank you. So this study that you conducted was done to assess a link between Drufo and cancer.
Yes.
And this was only one study that was not peer-reviewed or replicated.
That's correct.
In your singular study, the results merely suggested that there may be a correlation between Drufo and the development of cancer.
Yes, those in my study had a higher likelihood of being diagnosed with cancer.
And these results suggested that there may be a link.
Yes.
So you do not have a definitive link between Drufo and cancer.
Well, I would say my study is a definitive link. Yes, it suggests it, but to my understanding, and because I conducted the experiment, I would say that it shows pretty clearly that there's a link with Drufo and cancer.
You just stated that your results merely suggest a link.
Yes, they do suggest, but in my opinion, they also show a clear
That's
link.
my question. So your results suggest a link between Drufo and cancer.
Yes.
So you do not have a definitive link between Drufo and cancer.
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. I'm going to pause just for one quick moment. Are the plaintiffs ready to present their second witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to bring Carson Durst to the stand. Good afternoon, Ms. Durst.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
That's Carson Durst. That's Durst.
Now, Ms. Durst, you knew Mr. Doncourt before your employment, but what was your relationship with Mr. Charles Doncourt?
He's my best friend ever since I could remember.
So would you say that you know Mr. Doncourt well?
Pretty well.
How often did y'all hang out?
We were on the local soccer team. I had Sunday dinners at his house. Over the summer, I would spend time at their lake house, and they were my ride to every soccer game. Eventually, we went to college together.
Did y'all stay friends throughout college?
Yes, he even helped me get a job.
What college did you and Mr. Doncourt attend?
Arizona State University.
What did you graduate in?
I had a bachelor in chemical engineering.
Did anything happen during college that might change Mr. Doncourt in your relationship?
He helped me get an internship at Lush Fertilizer.
Where did you work after graduation?
Lush Fertilizers.
Did you plan to work there?
No, I didn't plan to work there.
Why did you end up working there?
I was concerned about not having a job after graduation, and I told Charles about my concerns. He said they were hiring interns over the summer, so I applied, and he said Blake could pull some strings for me to get in.
What was your position at Lush Fertilizer?
I was an intern on the research and development team, and after 3 months, I was promoted to a product development engineer.
Did your team ever test how safe Drufo was?
Yes, in 2003, when I arrived, we were testing the safety of the building.
What was your job in the development of Drufo?
I was assigned to researching one of the chemical compounds that comprised of Drufo.
Did the company know anything about Drufo before your research?
Yes, in 2001, they already had the chemical formula for Drufo.
Did you find tests that took place on other life forms besides humans?
Yes, I found a study that was done on rats.
Did you find tests that took place okay. Sorry, could you repeat that? I think I cut out at the end.
Okay, so during my study, I found a during my research, I found a study that was done on rats in England.
Your Honor, permission to have Carson Durst turn to Exhibit 3.
Granted.
Without saying what this is, do you recognize it?
Yes.
And what is it?
It's a study on rats.
Is it a fair and accurate representation?
Yes.
Your Honor, the plaintiff moves to enter Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Because there is a lack of foundation.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. This shows this lays a foundation for the study that Carson Durst did and the conclusions that came on the effect in rats.
Any further objection?
Yes, Your Honor. There still was not enough foundation for the jury to clearly understand what this is. I believe before it is moved into evidence, there needs to be further questioning about it.
Overruled, Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. When researching the effects of Jufra on rats, what was discovered?
In the conclusion of the study, it shows that for people working labor jobs like Dakota Weirs, if they come in contact with Jufra at a normal monthly intake, they have a possibility of developing cancer.
Did you report these conclusions?
Yes, I wrote them in my work journal.
Did anyone review your work?
Yes, the product manager, Jerry Langley, did.
Did the idea of Jufra being dangerous to humans ever cross your mind during this part of the research?
Yes, it did, and we were conducting a second research.
Did Jufra have any effects on humans?
Jufra was showed to be potentially carcinogenic, and it's linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Thank you. Next, we'll move into your new job. How was the work environment at Lush?
It was very toxic, and I just didn't feel safe there.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, this shows the environment that she's in at her new job at Lush to show why she switched to a different company later on.
Any further objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This trial is not about the work environment of Lush Fertilizer. It is solely about one of the ingredients in Lush Fertilizer.
Overruled. She may answer.
What was the question?
How was the work environment at Lush?
It was very toxic, and I just didn't feel safe.
When did you start searching for a new job?
After the 2005 abysmal performance review.
How did you end up leaving Lush?
I was laid off.
Why were you laid off?
I talked to Blake about Jerry and her bias towards me, but Lush Fertilizer cared more about covering up the situation than wanting a good employee.
How did that make you feel?
I was very hurt and betrayed, and felt betrayed because Blake said that we were like family, yet he couldn't even talk to a manager for me.
Where did you apply to after?
Terrace Greenery.
Why did you decide to work in the same field?
Fertilizer was the only thing I knew, and given my relationship with the Dawn courts, I felt conflicted at first, but in the end, we all have to look out for ourselves.
What happened on the legal side between you and Blake?
Blake and Lush Fertilizer tried to get the court to prevent me from joining Terrace Greenery.
Your Honor, relevance.
Response?
This shows how Carson Durst's relationship with Blake shows how this will later affect her changing to a new job. and her position in this case.
Overruled.
So, yes, so I felt conflicted moving to Terrace Greenery given my relationship with the Dawn Courts, but we have to look out for ourselves.
What have you been working on at Terrace Greenery for the past few years?
We've been working on fertilizer and its future looks very promising.
Does it look like Terrace Greenery will outperform Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, I do believe that Terrace Greenery will outperform Lush one day.
Does your animosity towards Blake impact what you're saying here today?
Even though I was hurt and betrayed by Blake, I will never lie in court just to get back at him. This was 16, 17 years ago, and I will not be holding a grudge for that long. I truly do believe that Drufo is unsafe.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. So just to clarify, you work at Terrace Greenery,
That's correct.
and Terrace Greenery is Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor.
Yes, that's correct.
So your current job is in competition with Lush Fertilizer.
I am not in competition. I'm just at a new job.
But your current job, Terrace Greenery, is in competition with Lush Fertilizer?
Yes.
And you used to work at Lush Fertilizer, though?
Yes.
And you were fired from Lush Fertilizer?
I was laid off, but yes.
So you know the owner of Lush Fertilizer is Blake Doncourt?
Yes.
Okay, so continuing on, shortly after you graduated from college, you were hired by Ms. Doncourt as an intern?
Yes, I was hired.
And positions like that are hard to come by for new graduates, correct?
Yes, I'm that smart.
But Blake Doncourt pulled some strings to help you get the position?
Yeah, he seemed pretty desperate.
And with this position, did you have access to all of the data analyzed by the various members of your research team?
No, I did not have all of my data, all of the data.
So you only know the research that you did?
Yes, I know the research that I did and people on my level. I didn't know the higher ups.
And although you knew the Doncourts personally, you were not given higher up information?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Response.
Your Honor, I'm just clarifying the information that Carson Doss does know and can testify to.
Okay. Any further objection?
No, Your Honor.
Overruled.
So to be clear, you did not see what upper management was doing?
No, I was not informed.
Moving on, did some of your coworkers think that you were unqualified for your position?
Yes, they were jealous because of my relationship with the Dawn Courts.
The quality of your work was criticized?
Yes.
Were there complaints about your job performance at Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, they were complaining that I was not pulling my weight and my part of the research, and they just didn't want me there.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Response.
Your Honor, I'm trying to see the credibility of this witness.
Any further objection?
No, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Okay, so next, do you know what abysmal means?
Yeah.
Okay, and you received an abysmal or extremely bad performance review at Lush Fertilizer before you were fired?
Yes, before I was laid off.
Also, after talking to Blake Doncourt about these problems, you were extremely angry with her?
I felt betrayed, but I would not lie in court to get back at him. Like my anger would not last till this day. It's been 17 years ago.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
We're going to pause again just a few moments before we do the last plaintiff's witness. Okay, plaintiff, are you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dakota Weir sustained. Good morning, Ms. Weirs.
Good morning.
Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
Dakota Weirs, Weirs.
Now, before we begin, can you please tell the jury why are you here today?
I'm here today because I believe the sole cause of my diagnosis of non-Hodgkin lymphoma is my use of Lush fertilizer.
Ms. Weirs, why do you think Lush Fertilizers is responsible for your cancer?
I worked as a landscaping technician at Haven Landscaping since I was 14, where I was in contact with Lush fertilizer quite often. Then I've learned that Lush fertilizer contains an ingredient called drufo that could cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Ms. Weirs, how has the development of cancer affected your everyday life?
Before my diagnosis, I was a very active member in my community. I was involved in extracurriculars. I volunteered at my local homeless shelter, and I was a piano player. Sadly, I'm no longer able to do any of this.
Ms. Weirs, you say you used to play the piano. Can you please talk to us a little more about that?
Objection.
Piano's my
Response to relevance objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This is going to prove the emotional damages my client has gone through because of cancer.
Any further objection?
Yes, Your Honor. They are not relating the piano playing in any way to the plaintiff's condition. They are simply asking them to explain their abilities at the piano.
Overruled.
Ms. Weirs, could you please tell us how you started playing the piano?
Piano's my passion. I've been playing ever since I was little.
How did you start playing the piano?
My grandfather's always been my inspiration for playing. He was the one who taught me when I was little.
How did piano impact your life?
My grandfather died when I was 7. Piano became a way for me to cope with his loss. When I played it, it felt as though he was still there with me. Because of my non-Hodgkin's, even sitting on the piano bench causes me to bruise, so I can no longer play. It feels as though I've lost him all over again.
Now, Ms. Weirs, how has your professional career been affected by non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Before my diagnosis, my professional career was growing exponentially. I was in recitals, I was winning competitions, and I was even awarded a full-ride scholarship to Juilliard.
Ms. Weirs, you talk about a full-ride scholarship to one of the most prestigious college for musicians. Could you please elaborate?
People were coming from all around the state to watch me play, which led to me being awarded with a full-ride scholarship to Juilliard. It was like a dream.
How did non-Hodgkin lymphoma affected you in an educational way?
I've had to turn down my scholarship to Juilliard because of the pain I go through while playing, and I'm afraid I'll never be able to pursue a professional career in concert piano ever again.
So now, Ms. Weirs, that your passion of your life has been taken away and you can't really do a lot of things, what do you think the quality of life will be now?
Honestly, it feels as though my whole life has been taken away from me. All we can do is hold out hope at this point.
Now, Ms. Weirs, earlier you mentioned how cancer has affected you physically. Now, I want to ask, what effects have you developed physically because of non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Because of my non-Hodgkin lymphoma, I often experience swollen lymph nodes, chills, chest pains, and fatigue.
Now, Ms. Weirs, I want to talk about your experience with cancer. So could you please describe your emotional effects that cancer has had on you?
My non-Hodgkin's took me and the whole family by surprise. My family's had to cut some costs, including my father can no longer pay off my sister's gambling debts because of my medications, which has really taken a toll on our relationship.
Look, now, Ms. Weirs, you mentioned you used to work in a landscaping company, which is where you came in contact with Rufo. Could you please tell us how long did you work there?
I worked there all throughout high school.
And while working there, did you wear protective gear?
No, I did not. Because of the heat conditions, it would have been unimaginable for me to be wearing all of the layers that were recommended.
Did your co-workers wear protective gear?
No, almost everybody typically just wore a t-shirt and shorts.
So was it unusual for you to dress the way you did?
No, in fact, it would have been unusual for me to be wearing all of that in those conditions.
Ms. Weirs, could you please tell the jury why do you believe Lush gave you cancer?
After my diagnosis, I was in a very dark place. I was both physically and emotionally exhausted. So I spent most days on the couch. And one day I saw in the news that non-Hodgkin lymphoma could possibly be linked to Lush Fertilizer's ingredient Drufo.
What evidence did your research show that you are so sure that Lush fertilizers give you cancer?
After learning this, me and my father did our own research where we found that Lush Fertilizer's ingredient Drufo was not only outlawed in France, but many other countries in Europe.
Ms. Weirs, I would like to talk a little bit more about your family. Do you have any siblings?
I have one twin sister whose name is Skylar. They're actually here today testifying against me.
So, Ms. Weirs, do you and your sister have a good relationship?
Me and Skylar have never really had the typical sisterly relationship others have had, but nonetheless, I love her. She's my sister.
How did your sister react to cancer?
My sister didn't take it well because of my father having to pay my medications. He can't afford to pay for her gambling debts as well, which my sister resents me for.
And Ms. Weirs, what does your sister does for a living?
My sister's a waitress as well as a freelance writer.
What does your sister typically write about?
My sister typically writes about things such as UFOs, flat earth theory, anti-vax culture, and Drufo.
Do you think your sister believes everything she writes about?
Honestly, I believe my sister would write anything for the right price.
And Ms. Weirs, after everything you have told us today, you think you and your sister could ever go back to having a good relationship?
To have my own twin take the stand against me, I don't think our relationship could ever recover.
Now, Ms. Weirs, after what you have gone through and what you have to go, do you think you ever recover from this?
To be 20 and to have something so life-threatening happen to me, it's terrifying. Honestly, I'm so scared.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Ms. Weirs. I understand this is an extremely difficult time in your life, and I apologize for that, but I just want to ask some questions to make sure I can clarify the facts of the case. So, you are trying to sue Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Correct.
And Lush Fertilizer contains the ingredient Drufo, correct?
It does.
And you believe Drufo caused your non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Yes,
And you read the provided label on the bottle?
I did.
And you were provided information by your boss on safety precautions?
Yes, I was.
But you did not follow these safety precautions?
No, almost everybody didn't.
And you did not take these precautions because you wanted to feel the wind on your face?
I didn't take the precautions because of the conditions I was working in.
Okay, so yes. You did not take these precautions because it was hot?
Yes, it was extremely hot out.
Okay. And many of your peers also did not follow these precautions?
No, they did not.
So you did not follow the precautions because no one else was?
No, I didn't because of the conditions I was working in.
You first encountered less fertilizer while working for the Haven Landscaping, correct?
Yes,
And you began working at Haven Landscaping at the age of 14, correct?
I did.
So you worked with fertilizers for several years?
Yes,
You used fertilizers and lawn chemicals besides Lush while on the job, correct?
yes,
And those chemicals often had some sort of warning on the packaging?
they did.
And this was to help customers take certain precautions while using the product, correct?
Yes,
And these precautions were similar to those you received while working with Lush, correct?
yes,
So those other chemicals could have caused you as much harm as Lush could have, correct?
the other chemicals didn't have Drufo, but they could have.
Okay. And there were also warnings to never use the products indoors?
There were no warnings. It was a recommendation.
And you used them indoors, though?
I did.
And you still did not use the recommended gear while using the products indoors?
No,
And you may not have worn protective gear even if you had known there were potential risks using Drufo, correct?
if I had known what I did now, I probably would have changed things.
But you still may not have.
I probably would have if I knew that I was going to get cancer.
You probably would have, but that means you may not have.
I would have.
Your Honor, may I have a moment to consult with co-counsel?
Yes.
So just to clarify, your testimony today is that you would have done things differently if you would have known Drufo had potential risks.
Had I known that I would have gotten cancer from Drufo, I probably would have changed things in my past.
But your testimony was that you would have changed things, correct?
If I had known I was going to get cancer.
Okay. So do you recall giving a prior statement about these events prior to today's hearing?
Yes,
And that statement was and that statement was under oath or verified?
yes,
And it was signed by you?
yes,
And you had an opportunity to review the statement?
yes,
And you swore to its accuracy?
yes,
And this statement was made closer in time to the events described than to today's testimony?
yes,
And it's true that in the prior statement, you said pretty much everyone, including me, wore shorts and t-shirts. Now, if I had known that Lush caused non-Hodgkin lymphoma, I may have done things differently.
Yes, I would have done things differently.
You claimed I may have done things differently.
Yes, as I said there, and now I would have done things differently.
It's a yes or no question. On line 67, you claimed I may have done things differently.
Yes, I would have done things differently.
And okay. Your Honor, may I have another moment to consult with co-counsel? I apologize.
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, so we're going to take a few moments before we switch over to the defense. Is the defense ready to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to call Blake Doncourt to the stand. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Blake Doncourt, Doncourtt.
And what is your profession?
I am the CEO at Lush Fertilizer.
And what does Lush Fertilizer produce?
Lush Fertilizer produces a fertilizer in agriculture and landscaping. One of our ingredients is Druvo.
And how is Lush Fertilizer doing?
I can say that Lush Fertilizer is doing well. I have helped grow the company to its success now, and 10% of our annual.
Objection relevance.
Response.
I am establishing the credibility of the witness and the company.
Any further objection?
I stand by my objection.
Overruled.
So, what causes and charities do you support?
We actually have our own charity, and it's to clean up the polluted areas worldwide.
And what makes you different from other employers?
Not only have I received an award, the Champions of Earth Award, I have helped grow the company to what it is now.
Shifting gears a little bit, earlier you mentioned Druvo. Can you tell me more about Druvo?
Druvo is a bonding agent in our fertilizer.
And we're here today because the plaintiff claims that Druvo is the cause of their illness. Tell me about how Lush Fertilizer assesses the potential effects of the ingredients in its fertilizers.
We have our own research and labs that we perform our own fertilizers on. And not only have we done it ourselves, but we've also compared our results to other scientists.
Tell me about Lush's findings regarding the health effects of Drufo.
There was no, I was unaware of any findings until, but then when I was aware, I took it off the market.
And you mentioned that you would not have allowed Drufo to be used in Lush's fertilizers if you thought it was potentially dangerous, if it was potentially carcinogenic. What did you learn about the potential health effects of Drufo?
Once I learned that Drufo could be carcinogenic, I took it off the market and started reevaluating it.
And how did you find out about the potential health effects of Drufo?
Once Carson notified me.
And who was Carson Durst?
Carson Durst, or I guess not research, but found any dangers or risks that were in our fertilizers. That was their job.
And why did Carson leave?
Carson left because they were fired.
Okay, now let's talk about the label on your fertilizers. Do they have a warning?
Technically, there's no quote warning on the fertilizer. There is recommendations, as there are to any fertilizer you see any day to day.
Was Lush required to put a warning on its fertilizers?
According to the EPA and our findings and other scientists' findings, there were no required warnings to put on there, but as an environmentally safe company, we did put a recommendation.
Now, how do you feel about the situation you're in?
I feel terrible, just terrible that Dakota is in this situation, but I know that Lush was not behind this. We are not lacking research, we are not liable, and Drufo's not lethal.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mrs. Doncourt.
Good morning.
For the beginning, you became the CEO of Lush Fertilizers in the year 2000, right?
That's correct.
And you built the company from the ground up to now one of the biggest fertilizer providers in the world?
I can't say from the ground up, but I've helped from what it is today.
And Lush Fertilizer became the flagship product of your company?
I guess I didn't understand you. Could you say that question?
The main product that your company sells is your fertilizer, Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Correct.
And Drufo is containing your fertilizer?
That's correct.
And we're here today because Drufo gave Dakota Weirs cancer, correct?
I'm not a medical expert, so I can't say that Drufo gave cancer.
Okay. Now, I will also talk to you about one of your employees, Carson Durst.
Okay.
Carson started working for you as an intern, correct?
What was that? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Carson Durst started working for you as an intern.
That's correct.
And he was laid off. She was laid off 3 years later.
That's also correct.
She went and started working for Cherry Greenery, your biggest competitor, correct?
Correct.
Carson's job was to look for dangerous side effects of the fertilizer, correct?
Yeah, any danger or risk that could be in our fertilizer.
And he brought his concerns to his line management, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Now, moving on, I want to talk a little about Drufo because it's the main chemical. So Drufo is in your fertilizers, as you mentioned, correct?
That's correct.
Drufo has been banned in some countries in the EU, right?
That's correct.
Drufo is a chemical bonding agent that allows the fertilizers to better adhere to what's growing, correct?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Drufo is a chemical bonding agent that allows the fertilizer to better adhere to what's growing, correct?
Yeah, it's a bonding agent.
And your product does not have a warning label, correct?
Technically, it has no warning label, but it does have a recommendation list as any spray fertilizer does.
But it has no warning label. Has no warning label like warning, this may give you cancer, correct?
No, there was no need for research. I had no research behind putting a warning on it.
And your product has no warning label, even though Drufel has been banned in the EU, correct?
That's correct, because I had no research behind putting a warning label on my
Now,
fertilizer.
Ms. Dunk, are you familiar with the process called baking?
That's correct.
It's a process of heating up the fertilizer, correct?
Correct.
Which by doing removes any carcinogenic properties that the product may contain.
Could be possible, correct?
Which carcinogenic properties has been found to lead to cancer, correct?
Carcinogenic, yes, can be leading to cancer.
And you don't bake your products, correct?
No, I do not.
Because it's too expensive?
I can't say it's too expensive, but I can say that it would definitely cut costs.
Your Honor, can I have a second to confirm with legal counsel?
Yes.
Okay. So your sworn testimony is that it's not too expensive for you to bake the product, correct?
I said that it cut cost.
Okay. You prepare a statement for this case, correct?
That's correct.
You carefully review it?
Come again?
You carefully review it?
I reviewed it, yeah.
And included everything that you know that might be relevant to the case?
That's correct.
And you knew this could be obtained at any time, correct?
That's correct.
And you knew the statement was important because it would, okay. Confirm. Okay, this is the statement that you prepare? Should I just send it? Okay. Okay. Going to line 109, you said, while baking the fertilizer would remove any carcinogenic risk, the fertilizers, the baking process was just too expensive for the little risks that it alleviated.
Okay.
What happened? So just to clarify, your sworn testimony is that it was not too expensive.
No, I said that it would cut cost.
Okay.
The 6%.
I'm moving on. I'll move on, Your Honor. Ms. Doncourt, you donate 10% of your profit, correct? Profit to the charity?
I give 10% to charities, yes.
In fact, your company is at the forefront of cleaning the most polluted areas in the world, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You direct all this money to charity, correct?
Yeah, the 10% annual profits to
Yeah,
charities.
yeah, it's too expensive for you to break your product.
Yes, we would cut down the 6% of our profit.
Even though baking it would make it 100% safe and reduce any little risks to nothing.
That's correct. That's what I said in my testimony.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Were you aware of Carson Durst's testimony before today's hearing? Testimony? I apologize.
Yes, that's correct.
But did you bake Drufo?
I did not.
Would that have even gotten rid of all of the carcinogens in it?
I don't believe it would. I don't think so.
Is there even any proof that Drufo is solid proof that Drufo is carcinogenic to humans?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is the defense ready to call their next witness?
I would like to call Skylar Weirs to the stand. I would like to call Skylar Weirs to the stand. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
I'm Sky, and that's spelled Weirs.
What is your relation to Dakota Weirs?
Dakota is my sister and we're twins.
Ms. Weirs, what is your current profession?
I'm an investigative journalist and I've spent a good amount of time investigating health issues, corporate policy, and agricultural technology.
And in your current profession, who are you employed by?
The magazine I write for, which is Rationalist, is a quarterly science education and science advocacy magazine published by a nonprofit organization.
Have you written any articles?
Yes, I have. I've written and published numerous articles in a variety of publications.
And what have these articles focused on?
Most of my articles have been agricultural technology or agritech.
And how long have you been researching this?
I've been researching this for about a year.
How did you start?
I started by reading publications issued by various agritech companies. Then I tracked down the research in those publications.
How did you conduct your research?
I spent considerable time researching agritech companies by reviewing publications written by these companies, research studies referenced in those publications, and information maintained by the USDA and NASDA.
Do you have any experience researching other chemicals?
In the publications mentioned previously, the research pesticides and herbicides that include other well-known carcinogens such as nitrates, glyphosates, and arsenic.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance on the last question.
Response.
I'm building credibility of my witness and her experience in this field.
Any further objection?
No, Your Honor.
Overruled.
So I'll re-ask that question, Ms. Weirs. Do you have any experience researching other chemicals?
In the publications mentioned previously, I researched pesticides and herbicides that include other well-known carcinogens such as nitrates, glyphosates, and arsenic.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, based upon her knowledge or experience, I am tendering Ms. Skylar Weirs as a qualified expert witness in the field of modern agritech in order to render an opinion on the safety of pesticides, fertilizers, and other agritech products.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. A brief word here.
You may.
Ms. Weirs, I'd like to talk to you about your education. You did not go to college, correct?
No, I did not.
And you made that decision partially based on the fact that an article you wrote was successful?
Yeah, that's correct.
So you chose to completely forego college because of an article that you wrote that was mildly popular.
For my education, I don't require a degree because of my research.
Okay. And furthermore, according to you, you have general knowledge on the subject of Drufo and agriculture, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yet you have no professional education?
No, I do not.
No college degrees on the subject?
No, I do not because I don't need a degree for my education.
And you don't have an internship at a place that uses this kind of information?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevancy?
So that we can continue, I'm going to overrule on this since we're in voir dire, but continue.
Ms. Weirs, you did not answer my last question. Would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
So you have not had an internship at a place that uses the kind of information you are claiming to be an expert on?
I don't believe so.
So you are claiming to be an expert witness because of general knowledge.
Yes,
And also, Ms. Weers, you work at Applebee's, correct, on the side?
that's correct.
And that is your main paying job besides your writing, correct?
It's a paying job, yes.
So you're a part-time waitress from Applebee's claiming to be an expert in a civil case.
I've done research on cases like this, so I have my research.
It's a yes or no question, Ms. Weers.
Could you ask the question, please?
So you are a part-time waitress from Applebee's claiming to be an expert witness in a civil case.
Yes, I am.
All right, Your Honor, the defense objects to the entrance of Skylar Wears as an expert as she lacks the knowledge, education, training, and experience under Rule 702.
Bonds?
Your Honor, under Rule 702, an expert witness is not required to hold a specific degree, training certificate, accreditation, or membership in a professional organization. I believe that my witness has displayed sufficient knowledge in her field and historical research to be considered an expert.
For the purposes of the mock trial competition, the objection is overruled, while well noted, and Ms. Weers may testify as an expert.
Thank you. Ms. Weers, as an expert in the field of modern agritech, is there anything specific that you've been researching?
Well, I've been doing research on Drufo, and I've written an article on the inquiry of the causal link between Drufo and cancer.
And what is Drufo?
Drufo is a chemical that's used in lush fertilizer. It's an incredibly effective bonding agent, and it's maybe even bigger than a bigger revolution in agritech than genetically modified crops alone.
And how does Drufo work as a bonding agent?
Drufo bonds to both the grass and the lush fertilizer's active ingredients, which are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and it prevents them from being washed away as quickly. It makes lush fertilizer less soluble, which means the nitrogen in their products is also less likely to contaminate groundwater and waterways.
Why does this make Drufo so effective?
A significantly smaller amount of fertilizer and pesticides need to be applied to the area. Drufo only needs to be added once or twice a year, opposed to other fertilizers that need to be applied 5 to 6 times a year.
And why do you consider this revolutionary?
Well, nitrogen is known to contribute to various types of cancer and other health issues as it turns into nitrates. It's present in many other types of pesticides and herbicides that people may be exposed to, but lush fertilizers' use of Drufo means less exposure to these chemicals. They are not lacking in their efforts to reduce harmful effects while using these products.
And what other ways do you know of that someone could lessen exposure to chemicals in pesticides and fertilizers?
By wearing protective equipment and clothing like a mask, gloves, and clothes that cover the skin.
To your knowledge, did Dakota wear this protective equipment?
The owner of Haven Landscaping, the company that Dakota worked for, never required any protective gear while working. I believe it was an issue on poor training of the owner's end.
And now, after your work and research in this field, what is your understanding of Drufo's carcinogenic nature?
Research on a causal link between exposure to Drufo and cancer such as non-Hodgkin lymphoma is inconclusive at best. Lush Fertilizers products and its use of Drufo is just as safe, if not more than the competitors' products.
Now, based on your research, Ms. Weers, do you believe that Drufo could have caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
There are a whole host of other products that contain lethal carcinogens and that are used in landscaping. It wouldn't surprise me if Dakota developed the non-Hodgkin lymphoma based on past exposures. I do love my sibling, and I truly wish I could support them in this case, but Dakota is blaming the one product designed to limit exposure to any harmful chemicals. Lush Fertilizer is not liable in this matter.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weers, I'd like to discuss your financial situation and your job now. So your writing is freelance, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you are receiving some income from it, correct?
Yes, I am.
But not enough to fully make ends meet?
That is correct.
In fact, you have a hard time making those ends meet because of your gambling debt, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And your parents were helping you pay off this debt.
Yes, they were.
After your mom died, your dad cut you off?
Yeah, he sadly did.
But as far as you know, you are still in his will, correct?
Yes, I am.
However, the amount of money you are potentially set to receive is dwindling because of Dakota's medical bills.
Yes, that is correct.
However, since you're testifying as an expert in this case, you stand to gain more recognition than a regular witness, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And with that publicity, more people would know who you are, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Which could possibly lead to more people paying attention to your work and you receiving more income because of it?
That could happen.
Okay. Ms. Reeves, I'd like to address your article work now. So you work for Science Skeptic magazine, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Overruled.
And that magazine that you work for is devoted to promoting scientific skepticism, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You and your magazine promote scientific skepticism to resist the spread of pseudoscience, superstition, and irrational beliefs, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
You and your magazine promote scientific skepticism to resist the spread of pseudoscience, superstition, and irrational belief, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And yet, in the articles you write, you have advocated for Drufo on multiple occasions using the science behind it, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So you promote Drufo from a scientific standpoint, despite being devoted to promoting scientific skepticism among your readers.
I've written about Drufo before, yes.
But if you had joined your sister's side in this case, you would lose all that effort and work, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I don't quite understand what you're asking.
Okay, going against Drufo in this case would have discredited your writing, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Response.
May I have a moment to confer with my co-counsel, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, this is not speculation because this comes from an expert witness and her personal knowledge.
Any further objection?
Your Honor, this is not my witness's field of expertise.
Overruled.
Okay. Would you like me to re-ask the question, Ms. Weirs?
Yes, please.
Going against Drufo in this case would have discredited you writing about it, correct?
It could have.
All right. But since you're testifying in this case about your work, you stand to make profit on its recognition, correct?
Yes, I am getting profit for my writing.
And that could potentially rid you of your debt?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
And the profit you could make from this case could potentially rid you of your debt, correct?
It could.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, how confident are you in your research?
I'm very confident in my research.
And because you have spent some time doing historic research. Okay, I'm sorry, moving on. But can I clarify that as an expert witness, what do you stand to gain from this testimony?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
As an expert witness, what do you stand to gain from this testimony?
My research and how, I know what Drufo is and what it's about.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is the defense ready to call their next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Every time. Your Honor, the defense would like to call Dr. Devin Williams to the stand, please. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Devin Williams, spelled Williams.
Where are you employed?
I am employed in Lush Fertilizer.
What is your role at Lush Fertilizer?
My role at Lush Fertilizer is to lead the toxicology research and development labs. I'm also on the ethics committee.
What are your duties with that?
My duties as the lead on the toxicology research and development labs is to make sure Drufo is a industrial leading, environmentally aware, and cost-effective ingredient.
How long have you worked for Lush Fertilizer?
I've worked for Lush Fertilizer about a decade now, and I've been the lead for the R&D for 7.
Where have you worked?
My work has taken me through Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, and my home state, Colorado.
What makes you qualified for your line of work?
My line of work that given me qualified was my education, which from undergrad to PhD was then at the Colorado State University. I also had a post-PhD program at the University of Utah.
Do you have any more education?
Yes, I also went to the University of New Mexico College of Pharmacy and also the University of Colorado Offshoots Medical Campus Graduate School.
Where do you primarily work?
I primarily work at Lush, in Colorado.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, based upon the knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, I am tendering Devin Williams as a qualified expert witness in the field of toxicology.
Any objection?
Yes, a quick body, Your Honor.
Yes.
Dr. Williams, you went to the University of Utah in 1993 for pharmacotoxicology, correct?
Yes.
You also went to Colorado State University and majored in forensic toxicology, specialization in 1998?
Yes.
This was in 2003?
Could you repeat that?
You got your PhD in pharmacology and toxicology specialization in 2003, correct?
Yes.
So your last educational experience related to toxicology was 19 years ago?
Yes, in education, but I've also worked until now in toxicology.
But your last educational experience was 19 years ago, correct?
Yes.
Do you have toxicology certifications in multiple states?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, we don't object to Dr. Devin Williams being entered as an expert in toxicology. We only ask that he sticks to the parameters of his expertise when testifying.
So Dr. Williams may testify as an expert in, as proffered by the defense. Go ahead.
Dr. Williams, I'm going to ask you a few questions in your area of expertise, toxicology. First off, what is fertilizer?
Fertilizer is a product which enhances the growth of plants by either adding nutrients to the soil or by enhancing the soil itself.
Are there any problems with fertilizer?
Yes, there are some problems with fertilizer, specifically the mid-20th century fertilizer. The problem is the eutrophication, which in simpler terms is the excess of nutrients buildup in water, in bodies of water from agricultural runoff.
What does this excess nutrients do?
Main problem comes from excess nitrogen. This excess nitrogen is converted into nitrates by the bacteria in the ground.
What does it do then?
This excess leads to an increased density of algae blooms, which causes the water to have less oxygen in it, which kills the fish. And most seriously, it can harbor harmful bacteria to humans.
How
Objection
does
to relevance, Your Honor.
Response.
Your Honor, I think it is very important for the jury to understand how fertilizer works because this is a case about a chemical in fertilizer.
Any further objection?
No, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Dr. Williams, how does your new generation of fertilizer combat this problem?
The way our new fertilizer combats eutrophication is by the use of Drufo.
And what is Drufo?
Drufo is our revolutionary product.
Can you explain more?
Drufo is a binding agent in our fertilizer, which binds the ingredients to the plant or whatever it's sprayed on.
Why would we want that?
It would result in less fertilizer being used, and it would be cheaper too. It also stops the eutrophication before it starts.
What is your conjecture about the plaintiff's claims on Drufo?
Well, Drufo doesn't have any decisive evidence to warrant the U.S. court to justify that Drufo causes cancer. We did our research, which wasn't lacking, and we didn't find Drufo to be lethal.
So Drufo doesn't cause cancer?
You can't say definitively. If you were to take a large group of people, a small number of them will develop some cancer or some type of cancer. But if you relate it to Drufo, it's more complicated since now you have to consider other factors.
Can you explain more?
Well, let's use an analogy to make it simpler. If you had 100,000 red apples and 100,000 green apples in a field or in a barrel, and pick 10 apples, you should pick 5 red and 5 green.
You said statistically. What does that mean?
It would have been mathematically it should have been 5 and 5, but it's not like that in nature. It's more random, and it's like and also you might be trying to compare oranges to apples.
Can you explain the apples to oranges?
In Dr. Rogers' study with Drufo, he used farmers, gardeners, and just regular old people off the street.
Objection, Your Honor, to relevance.
Response.
Your Honor, Dr. Williams is just saying his opinion on the different studies that have been shown during this trial.
Any further objection?
No, Your Honor.
Overruled.
So, Dr. Williams, can you explain more about your analogy with apples to oranges?
Yes, as I was saying, in Dr. Rogers' studies, he used farmers, gardeners, and regular people off the streets and evaluated if they got an increased risk of cancer, even though a lot of them didn't have that much similarity besides the farmers and gardeners.
So, back to your original analogy, can you relate that to Drufo?
Of course, if you had a group of people that use fertilizer, you have to consider the fact that the results will differ between groups of people.
And is there any downside to Drufo?
From my overseeing of the development of Drufo, I didn't see any, but some would look at the nitrogen as one.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, because of the nitrogen in Drufo, the European Union's nitrate directive has banned Drufo in the EU and some of the countries, all their example.
So it's banned, but can you explain further?
With the nitrogen, even though there's nitrogen in Drufo, it's a small amount compared to the other fertilizers, and pour in a dish, feed a bacteria, you get nitrates. That won't happen in nature since nitrogen will be also consumed by the plants.
So Drufo isn't banned because it causes cancer?
No, it's not because it's banned because of cancer. It's banned because of nitrogen. The fact that Dakota got the cancer is terrible, but there's no definitive proof and definitive to say there's a correlation between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
When you joined Lush, only 50% of people working on Drufos development were still there.
Yes.
You were promoted to lead labs.
Yes.
Blake hired you to develop Drufo.
Yes.
Blake needed you to keep Drufo products industry leading,
Yes.
environmentally aware,
Yes.
and cost effective,
Yes.
but not to provide a safe product for human use.
I consider that also since I'm also on the ethics committee.
But he did not provide, he did not hire you to provide a safe product for Drufo.
No, but I would have also still put it in to make sure it's safe.
Okay. Eutrophication is the buildup of excessive nutrients in bodies of water.
Yes.
It all traces back to excess nitrate.
Yes.
Nitrates are unused nitrogen from fertilizers.
Yes, that got converted by bacteria.
These nitrates enter streams and lakes and are harmful to humans.
Yes.
In fact, it is banned in the entire EU.
Yes, as I stated before.
It is banned because it contributes to more than incidental nitrate accumulation in lab tests.
The lab tests were very unrealistic, but yes.
Just to clarify, nitrates cause eutrophication,
Yes.
the same eutrophication that your company claims to decrease.
Yes.
Your company plans to ask the EU to reconsider Drufo's approval.
Yes.
If your product was to be approved by the EU, you would make a lot of money, correct?
Well, of course, our products would have increased sales there.
Okay. If this case finds that Drufo does cause cancer, what would change that would change things, correct?
Of course.
In fact, it would create a whole host of new bureaucratic roadblocks with the EU.
Well, of course.
You can compare the incident rate for people who use different types of fertilizers with the incident rate of people who use Drufo fertilizers.
Yes.
But you did not conduct a study, correct?
Yes, I did. I just didn't state it.
But you didn't conduct the study.
I'm the lead. I overwatch everyone else's study.
Instead, you compared incident rates to jelly bean colors.
Yes, to make it simpler to understand.
When you turn the analogy into Drufo, the data all came in under normal confidence level, correct?
Yes.
This means that the data you looked at was consistent with the uses of Drufo fertilizers not having an elevated risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma compared to uses of other fertilizers.
Yes.
This means that Drufo users have the same risk of developing non-Hodgkin lymphoma as users of toxic fertilizers.
Could you repeat that?
This would mean that Drufo users have the same risk of developing non-Hodgkin lymphoma as users of toxic fertilizers.
I'm not getting your question.
So what I'm asking you is Drufo users, someone that uses Drufo, would it be prone to the same risk of developing the non-Hodgkin lymphoma cancer as a user of any toxic fertilizer?
They wouldn't be the same.
But they still have the same risk.
You should always consider the risk, but there is no risk.
That is yes or no, Dr. Devin Williams?
Could you say the question again so I can give you a yes or no question?
This means that Drufo users have the same risk of developing non-Hodgkin lymphoma as users of toxic fertilizers?
No.
You claim that Casey Rogers set out to find harmful effects caused by chemical agents?
Yes.
In fact, you once had a professor at CSU that said when someone finds what they set out to find, always question the results.
Yes.
However, it's your job to find positive results for the company.
Yes and no.
I need a straight answer, sir.
It's more complicated than that, but yes, my main goal is to find a positive output.
Thank you. And in your own words, you admit that you have a financial bias in the outcome of this case?
Of course, but also Rogers.
We're talking about you, so you do have a financial bias.
Yes, and Rogers.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Can you redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, I will redirect. You said earlier that you developed Drufo, correct?
I couldn't hear you correctly. Could you say that again?
I'm sorry. Dr. Williams, you said that you helped develop Drufo?
Yes.
And did you also say in your testimony today that Drufo prevents esterification?
Yes.
And what correlations did you find between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
I didn't find any correlation between the two, any definitive correlation at least.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you. So we'll pause just a little bit before we go into closing arguments. Okay, plaintiff, are you ready to present your closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. Sustainable, affordable, and lethal. Today, we have shown you how Lush Fertilizer has jeopardized the life of Dakota Weirs. They have compromised the safety of their product in favor of their environmental impact and the affordability. The consequence of this choice has been dire. It has ended in reunition of a 20-year-old's life. Today, you saw the emotional and physical harm that Lush has brought upon this young woman. Today, you heard from Dakota Weirs, who has lost her quality of life and her passion due to Drufo, along with her future and family. She has been forced to give up her future in piano and a full ride scholarship to Juilliard. Along the way, she also lost some form of family, as you saw earlier. We also heard from Carson Durst, who formerly worked at Lush Fertilizer. He was told to cover up his results and the bad things about Drufo to keep his job. He later was fired because he refused to stand down when mistreated by his manager. The last person on the plaintiff's side we heard from was Dr. Casey Rogers, who has completed her own study on Drufo, which provided that Drufo has harmful and negative effects, the most harmful effect being cancer. Today, the defense tried to tell you a tale of Lush Fertilizer's innocence, but all they really proved was their own negligence. Their biased and unqualified expert witnesses spend a great deal of time trying to prove to you their innocence by promoting their environmental impact. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the environmental impact of this product has nothing to do with its cancerous effect on the consumer. Earlier on the defense side, we heard from Dr. Devin Williams, and we're told that he was brought in to make sure that Jufo is industry leading, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly. We can see from this trial that he puts the environmental impact and effects of cost over the safety of this product. He also has made it clear that his financial gains from this will be great, proving more that he would do anything to keep Lush on top. Skylar Weirs is another witness you heard from and learned of gambling debt that could no longer be paid due to her sister's medical bills. She is an internet certified expert with no college degree who admits to promoting scientific skepticism. Today, you also heard from the CEO of Lush Fertilizer himself. He told you himself that he wants to stay at the top of the industry no matter the cost. He told us that his concerns are for the environment over the safety of the product. We were also told that the ingredients within Jufo are not baked, even though baking the product would eliminate any risk of it being carcinogenic. While Jufo is banned in the EU, Blake shows no action in questioning his own scientists. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the burden of proof is upon the plaintiff to prove that Lush Fertilizer was negligent by a preponderance of evidence, meaning that it is more likely than not that all aspects of the plaintiff's claims of negligence were committed. If we remember from earlier, they neglected to add a warning. A recommendation is not the same. If Jufo is a big name company, why not add this simply cheap label? Through the evidence provided today, we have proven that 1, the defendant manufactured a product containing the chemical compound Jufo. 2, the defendant was negligent by failing to exercise a reasonable care. And 3, the plaintiff has damages that were caused by the defendant's negligence. Lush Fertilizer was too concerned with being sustainable and affordable that they didn't care if they put a lethal product on the market. The consequence of this negligence has been the reignition of one young girl's aspirations and future. As we all know, you only live once. We ask that you find in favor of the plaintiff and find Lush Fertilizer liable. We ask that you hold Lush Fertilizer accountable and ask that you give Dakota Weirs $450,000 in damages. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the defense ready for their closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, based on the evidence that has been provided throughout today's trial, Lush's research is not lacking. Lush is not liable, and Jufo is not lethal. You heard from Dakota Weirs, who today contradicted their own affidavit, making one question how honest they have truly been throughout this case. Dakota began working at the company Haven Landscaping at the age of 14 and worked there for several years, working with different seeds and fertilizers, which all had warnings. But their excuses for not following these warnings, it was hot. They wanted to feel the wind on their face, and neither did their peers. They used inside despite instructions not to. And not wearing a mask or protection, not following any of the warnings would make it perfectly plausible that any one of the other chemicals used could have caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin lymphoma. After being so upset over losing their scholarship to Juilliard, they decided to target Lush, claiming that they were lacking in research and proper warnings, that Lush was liable, and that Jufo, the chemical component in Lush, was lethal. But Lush rightfully defended themselves, pointing out that Lush is not lacking in research, that they are not liable, and that Jufo is not lethal. Carson Durst, who attempted to prove there was a carcinogen in humans from Jufo by using a study on rats, was not a good worker and had many complaints about their job. Yet Carson was still given a job and promoted, no doubt because of their relationship with Blake. But they claimed it was because they were just that smart. Carson was upset when they were fired, and they went to Terra's Greenery, breaking their contract out of revenge. And as if that was not enough, they decided to target Lush directly. And they made the case that Lush was lacking in their research, that Drufo was dangerous and lethal despite it being their job to look for and report those dangers. And Carson's lack of dependability and failure to properly do their job proves the point that Lush is not lacking in research. Lush is not liable and Drufo is not lethal. Casey Rogers conducted their own singular experiment, which only they had the availability to look at. It was not peer-reviewed, was not replicated, and therefore cannot be verified. There were some minor results, but no definitive link that Drufo caused cancer. Casey Rogers was the one lacking in proper research. You heard from Devin Williams today, who explained that there is no correlation between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and explained that Lush battles eutrophication, making a solid, I apologize, as well as explaining that Lush battles eutrophication, making it better for the environment and proving Drufo is not lethal. You heard from Skylar Weirs, who is here to support her research and what she believes in, who properly researched Drufo and found no connection with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And you heard from Blake Doncourt, the CEO of the company, who confirmed that there were indeed precautions on the bottle, which weren't even necessary. Blake cares about the safety of her product users, has donated money to charities, and works hard to help the environment, which makes one ask, why would Blake do anything to harm the environment after working so hard to protect it? If anything, the plaintiff today has only reinforced the point that Lush was not lacking research, not liable, and Drufo is not lethal. In order to find this case in favor of the plaintiff, the jury must find that Lush manufactured a fertilizer product containing Drufo. The defendant was negligent by failing to exercise reasonable care to prevent the product from creating a risk of harm to persons reasonably expected to use the product in a reasonably expected manner. And the plaintiff was one of the persons reasonably expected to use the product, and plaintiff had damages caused by the defendant's negligence. The plaintiff has not proved all of these, so I request that the case find this case in favor of the defendant. I would also like to direct the jury's attention to jury instruction number 8, which addresses comparative fault. So if the jury finds that both Dakota Weirs and Lush Fertilizers showed negligence and both contributed to Dakota's condition, the contributory damage award can be cut down by whatever the jury finds fit due to comparative fault from the plaintiff and Lush Fertilizer. Thank you.
Any rebuttal argument?
Yes, Your Honor. As you heard from the defense, they talked about financial gain. Financial gain is being seen all around in this case, but is mostly being seen on the defense side. Defense gains majority of the financial gain from this case. Many studies have been done on rats. As we heard earlier, the defense in their closing talked about the studies done on rats and that they didn't like that idea. But many studies have been done on rats throughout the years, and the defense tries to discredit this notion. But would you rather have the study be done on humans before it is done on rats? I don't think so. I think you have a chance of killing an innocent human. Testing it on a human rat.
Time's up.
Your Honor, you're muted.
Thank you. So thank you, teams. We're gonna pause to work on our ballots, and then we're gonna come back and gonna have the panelists introduce themselves, and we'll give you some feedback. But thank you both teams for your performances today. So give us just a moment. Mr. Shoemaker, Mr. Mont, when you're both ready, if you can please just let me know.
Your Honor, I'm ready whenever it's appropriate.
Your Honor, I'm also ready.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I guess if we can start with Mr. Shoemaker, if you would please introduce yourself and provide some feedback.
Okay, thank you very much, Judge. My name's Dennis Shoemaker. I'm with the Rotary Club of Colorado Springs, and I've been doing mock trial probably for over 15 years now. And I welcome the opportunity to come and see how the hard work that you've put into this and your passion. And it's very welcoming to see that. Just a little bit of feedback. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to talk to you about the case or anything. I'm more of awarding the Academy Award for your performance. And the only thing I would say is take the opportunity to breathe, slow down a little bit. A pause is sometimes a very effective thing to have in your presentation. So take the opportunity to do that. I will make one comment about presentation, and that is you had some opportunity to have some of your exhibits, like the one for the chemicals that are in the compound. So take that. I know it's, that you have to do the share screen thing and do that, but take the opportunity to do that and show some words to bolster your argument. But other than that, I wish you well in the succeeding rounds, and thank you for taking the time and the extra effort in your schoolwork to do this, particularly in the Zoom environment. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Munt?
Yes, Your Honor. I am also a member of the Colorado Springs Rotary Club, and I'm presently in Phoenix, Arizona, where I'm not shoveling sunshine. But I practiced law for 55 years, so I've done a little of that. I guess I was impressed with all of you. I think you all did a very fine job. I would add to what Dennis said. I noticed some of you improved a lot as we went along. You were very nervous when you started, and I can't tell you that in 55 years I didn't have butterflies before you start any case. It's just conquering it real quickly is what's going to get you through it. But keep up your work, and God bless you, and good luck in the future rounds.
Thank you. So I'm going to give just a few more pointers, so bear with me. But let me just say, let me preface my state pointers by saying, obviously, please follow whatever your coaches tell you to do. So I know that I was a mock trial coach for several years for high school. And I know that you work really closely with your coaches to determine strategy, et cetera. So please just think of these as things to think about. I agree with both Mr. Shoemaker and Mr. Mott. You all did an excellent job. I know how hard it is to go through the problem and pull out information and make these decisions. And I thought you all did a really excellent job overall. Carlos, on your opening, I encourage you to slow down. So I had a hard time figuring out what exactly the plaintiff was going to present. And then once you actually got into your case, it became really clear. So I don't know if maybe there's a possibility to shorten your open statement, because I did see you were using all of your time. Perhaps if there's an opportunity to shorten it, that might give you the opportunity to be able to slow down a bit. I loved the cross questions for plaintiff's attorneys. You guys made really good points. Let's see. If you are going to lodge an objection, I know sometimes there was like relevance, etc. Make sure that you're prepared to explain the basis of your objection. But just depending upon how far you go in the competition, you might have to do that. On the rebuttal, Mila, on the rebuttal closing argument, if there's a point that you're going to make sure that it's, if you know you only have a short amount of time, make sure that it's a really clear and quick point, so that way you don't run out of time on that. For the defense team, so you guys also had good cross examinations and really good cross points, but I noticed that, you know, a lot of the times the witness would answer what you wanted to answer, but then they would add something. And it seemed like you wanted to make sure that they said only what maybe is in their affidavit or what you wanted them to say. You don't need to focus on that, on the witness answering exactly. We can see as the jury and as the panelists that you're making the point that you need to make and that they're maybe being a bit combative. So you don't have to ask them multiple times when you've made your point. I love the theme, not lacking, not liable, not lethal, and you did a really good point, obviously having it in the open and the close, and then having witnesses say that in their testimony, so that was great. And I liked your direct questions, that you guys created a good roadmap of exactly where you were going with your defense. So again, overall, great job, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing us to participate in this with you today. Before everyone disconnects, did any of you have any questions for anyone? Okay. All right, so good luck to all of you as you go forward. Mr. Bailey, do you need anything from us?
No, we've got all the ballots. Excellent job by everyone. Scorers, presiding judge, but most particularly the teams. This trial is hereby adjourned.
Thank you.